This is a meeting of the Master Plan Committee. We now have a quorum. So I will read the governor's message. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18 in the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Master Plan Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website, www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting on www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after this meeting. So we should do a roll call for to prove we have quorum. So Luttrell here, Watson,
Present.
Stivers,
Present.
Sines,
Present.
Markalier,
Present.
McKee,
Present.
Mills,
Present.
Braccio,
Present.
and Joyce, I'm going to wreck your last name, so I'll
That's
use
okay. I'm here.
Okay, the first thing on the agenda is the results of the survey, which we just received, and I was only able to post it this afternoon on the website. And Sarah, did you look at that and want to present something to the committee?
Yeah, I did. So I had an opportunity to kind of go through and do some kind of like rough aggregation of some of the info, just kind of looking at what stuck out. And so in that first section, talking about open space, green initiatives, and recreation, the three, I just kind of took
I'm sorry, is it possible for you to share that?
Let me see. Yes, I probably can. Let me just, yes. Is it saved under meeting prep on your Google Drive?
Yes, and it's dated June 3rd,
Sure.
I think is where I found it.
Okay, and yes, okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, I have it open. Let me get back to Zoom. Thanks for your patience. All this technology. Okay. Okay, so here we are. Here are the survey results. And I'll do my best, they're kind of grouped, together under the headings. So this is the first one, protection of open space, green initiatives, and recreation. So as you can see, from the data, question number 2 here, management of existing conservation spaces and other open spaces. The green and the yellow represent important or extremely important. So under that particular question, out of the 290 respondents, 214 marked that as important or extremely important. And again, that was like kind of a pretty big teller there. I picked the top 3 from each, set of questions just to kind of talk about. So the second one was number 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. And that question is development of recreation facilities and activities to meet a broad range of ages and interests. Again, we're looking at that important to extremely important. 207 marked it as such out of 290. So, really the lion's share. So number 6, that is, oh, I'm sorry, I was 1 off. This is number 5. Here's number 6. That's natural resource use. So again, in terms of important to extremely important, respondents marked 153 between those 2 categories out of 289. So clearly, preservation of open space, increased recreational opportunities is a really big draw to the town. In terms of feedback that was given in the comments or the other portion, a lot of people provided feedback who took the survey. There was definitely a theme, and the theme was a town pool. So, I don't know if that's something that has been discussed in the past or, something that's come up recently, but, many of the people who decided to write in and respond to this section indicated the desire for a town pool. So I'm just going to move on. And here, pardon?
How many people did respond like that?
With a town pool, that would be, so I didn't count how many people, wrote in responses overall. I will say that, I prepared this narrative discussion kind of this afternoon because I was hoping that MAPC would have a more in-depth feedback. But there was at least 12 respondents, 12 to 15 respondents who indicated a pool.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And here's, all the data sets if you all would like to review those, hard numbers. Same thing with the respondents, in terms of town pool, town pool. So you feel free to review those.
Well, I think for tonight, we're going to look mostly at the bar graphs.
Yeah,
And then we can each review, because there were a lot of comments and
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, that's what I figured. So
yeah, so we can each review them and, categorize them on our own and come back and with ideas of, what they, there's any specific themes from any of those, but the pool definitely stuck out.
It just stuck out, it was interesting.
I was surprised, actually.
Yeah, so many people want a pool. So, okay, here of note, I think under housing and, those objectives, we're kind of looking at the other side of that bar graph. So the colors in the red and in the purple are not at all important and somewhat important. And we see, very large responses in question number 1, So that's increase the diversity of housing types, Southborough, single family, multifamily, mixed use. So trying to increase the housing stock for maybe some smaller units, maybe some mixed use units. 170 responded to either of those two categories as such, and out of 273 total. So, clearly not a priority, at least for the people who responded to this particular survey. So second, we see in question number 2, increase the supply of housing at range levels of affordability. So getting to being able to see people who work for the town in kind of maybe entry-level positions, live in the town, teachers, police officers and such. And there we saw 146 mark, either not at all important or somewhat important, out of 273.
What I thought was interesting is that the bar graphs show that diversity of housing is not important at all, but the comments mention accessory apartments and affordability for single mothers and affordability for seniors. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there, which those
Unless-
things would be diversity of housing.
Yes,
Right,
I
unless the
agree.
people that are extremely important are the ones that made the comments. And it's the third one down, the safe harbor. Don't
Yes.
that one to me is completely opposite of the first two. If you don't want diversity of housing, you know what? If we don't reach safe harbor,
Right.
they can do what they want with 40B stuff.
Well, yeah, and so I think, it is of note that even for that safe harbor question, the lion's share of respondents marked not at all important or somewhat important. So, perhaps, some sort of education, about, why reaching that safe harbor status is really important. I'm not really sure how to remedy that.
Tom,
Yeah, that one to me just seems like the opposite. When you answer it the first two that way, okay, I mean, they answered it that way. And it could be like you said, Sarah, an educational thing that they don't realize what it means to reach the safe harbor status.
Right.
I think that's my point, Tom, that I've talked to a lot of people about this over the years. I think if you pick 10 people randomly in town, I bet 9 of them would have no idea what safe harbor means.
Right.
I agree.
So
Right.
I think that's an educational issue.
And so, yeah, and number, 3 that
Howard,
had kind of,
Fourth one. So basically, they want to make sure that people that have ADA accessibility stuff, it's not as negative.
yeah. So, so number 5 down here was the third one, that I took a look at more critically given the numbers. And so incentivize development of desired affordable housing stock, amendments to towns zoning bylaws and other means. So, facilitating that type of desirable development through, zoning amendments and such, and 154, not at all important, somewhat important, out of 270.
That's
So yeah, some things to kind of keep an eye on there, I think. So move down to the next set of graphs. So here we are at Sense of Community Schools Historic Assets. So here, we only have 4 questions, but I picked 3 of them anyway to keep with continuity. So number 1 is work with schools as a primary source of community engagement with school families to coordinate their strategic plan and evolution of their programs. So most recipients, 158 of 273 marked important to extremely important. So it seems like these recipients think that, engaging the schools in terms of, getting buy-in for the strategic plan, getting out some of the information is a good way to go about that. Number 2 here, create a focus location in town, examples either downtown or Park Street, to bring the community together to provide venues for cultural events and intergenerational activities. So establishing some sort of, place where people can maybe gather, which is kind of ironic now, but things are gonna turn around and we're going to be gathering sometime at some point, to have, maybe some sort of like street fairs or community gatherings, just a general kind of almost like a, the traditional kind of town square vibe and location, establishing that somewhere in town as a purposeful use. So 186 out of 275 responded that that was important or extremely important. So number 3, and they just happen to go in order here, create support for cultural activities as a way to draw all age and interest groups in Southborough together. So, trying to make sure that cultural activities, intergenerational activities are happening in town to support that kind of community sense of place. 170 responded either important or extremely important out of 274. So 2/3 of folks pretty much, responded that way, 2/3 ish. So let's get down to the next set of graphs. Here we go. Accessibility, connectivity, transportation. So let's take a look at these. Again, we're looking at number 1 in terms of addressing, increased traffic flows, particularly from through traffic on Southborough roads. So making sure that, commuters who are coming through Southborough get through quickly and are not blocking up the, kind of the artery streets that are coming off of probably Route 9, I would venture. So 165 of 269 responded important to extremely important on that question. So addressing those traffic flow issues from through traffic is definitely important for folks who are responding. Number 2, strategically enhance connectivity within Southborough and with surrounding communities in terms of sidewalks, trails, and pedestrian crossings. So just as, it was important in this section for folks to see that through traffic getting through kind of unencumbered, they also really want to see more pedestrian walkways, more capacity to get around, maybe on foot or by bike. 206 respondents marked that as important or extremely important out of 270 total respondents for that question. So, and number 4, which kind of builds off of the number 1 that we looked at, work with Mass DOT to erase Route 9 congestion. That was 183 important or extremely important out of 269 who responded to that question.
The pandemic took care of that. Check.
How about it?
It's getting busier though.
It is.
Slowly getting back to normal. Okay. And here we are, commercial diversity, public services, resiliency, and build out. So here we saw number 2, question number 2. So that is utilize commercial industrial spaces to generate new tax revenue. So 195 responded that was important or extremely important out of 261 who responded to that particular question. And now the rest of these are actually pretty even. So I did a little look-see, and we had 2 that came in as a tie. Number 3, increase vitality of the villages. So, you know, those small villages denotated in Southborough. 140 respondents marked that as important or extremely important out of 259 who answered that particular question. And then number 4, identify and develop additional infrastructure needed to support commercial development. Example would be a wastewater treatment facility. Again, that was 140 marked important or extremely important out of 259 total respondents on that question. It's of note that all the questions did not have an even response. We had as many as 291 responses at the most for certain questions. And then we got down to, I think the lowest was 250. So, you know, I think sometimes on these long surveys, people miss questions. Other times it's just not as important to them, so they just don't answer. So that's why we see a little bit of variation in the number of responses per question. But that's kind of par for the course. Definitely, again, a lot of comments to sift through. So I think that will provide, you know, some good additional insight in terms of, you know, writing up the start of this whole master plan.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
It should be noted, anyone who has had a chance to look at the survey at all, that the survey that got posted online was not the survey that we edited and sent to MAPC. We had, they had sent this survey, and we edited it down so it would be shorter. Then we talked to MAPC on a con call and went over all the edits to make sure that what we wanted would end up in the survey, and they sent a final document, and then they posted the wrong document online. So I don't know if the committee wants to make note of that to MAPC or just move on from here. But I just wanted to let you know, because I know a lot of people put a lot of work into editing and sending comments.
So you discussed that with them in terms of they're aware that happened?
I discovered that tonight,
Oh,
so I haven't had a chance.
I'd certainly discuss it with them.
Hmm.
I mean, at this point, I don't think we can very easily go back and redo it, frankly.
Right.
I mean, I actually don't recall enough of what our final version was versus what they sent out. That might be useful to look at. Let's see if there are,
It was a lot shorter, which may be why some people didn't answer all the
ours
questions.
was, yeah.
Yes, it was a few questions, you know, quite a few questions shorter. And I think there was some clarity given to some of the questions provided through the edits.
I certainly wouldn't mind reminding them, hey, guys, what happened here? We're pretty upset about it. We're trying to figure out what to do. So more news
I agree
later.
with Sam. They
But I
said
don't-
that they did send out the wrong one.
I'll certainly do that. So as Sarah mentioned, there are lots and lots of comments, so I would encourage you all to read them and see if there are any commonalities or what can be, lessons can be learned from those comments.
So
Mimi,
maybe
where,
topic for the next meeting is to figure out, what we see as the key points out of it. Get
Right.
some consensus around that.
Yes.
where was it on Google Docs?
It's under meeting prep, under tonight's meeting.
All right.
Okay, anything else on survey?
I just had a question. Are we going to be proactive to share this with other groups? Like, there's some information in here that seems to be contradictory to what some groups have been advocating. So it might be good to make sure we get it out to like the EDC and recreation and other groups so that they can incorporate it into their own plans that the CPC uses to help prioritize projects. So I don't know.
Sure, it's on our Google Drive, which is accessible to anybody through the master plan committee.
I mean, I think that's it's a good, maybe a good opportunity to kind of just remind ourselves that what we said we would do with this is get the draft visioning report, which this survey will be part of that report in the same way that the feedback from the Vision Forum is part of the draft report. And then we discussed taking that report out to all of the boards and commissions that we either represent or will be impacted by it. So if you take recreation, for example, we would be looking for Dave Candela or whoever is going to be the recreation rep to take that to take the report in, and with specific focus on the aspects that affect that commission and review it and discuss if they want to add things, if they don't agree with things and they want to propose changes. So I think that would be a kind of a more formal next steps on that, but I think it would be good to just make people aware that survey is out there.
So are we saying it's okay to distribute it to our individual committees? I just want to be clear on that.
Well, it's public now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on our Google Drive, which is.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
saying it out loud, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea if we proactively send it out versus just asking people to
Yeah.
put that in Google Drive, only because it's a recent survey, it's new data, it's really live, and I think it's helpful for all committees who work with this. So,
Agreed.
Agreed.
Sure.
But I think, Tom, you raised an interesting point in that there's a message in here that people could get unduly upset by in some of these areas. For example, I was a little surprised by the housing stuff and ADA stuff. And for me, the challenge is how do you balance what people, quotes, want versus what good public policy is? And I think that in a well-run organization, you've got leadership that stands up and says there are some things that may not be so popular, but things that we ought to do because they're the right thing from a long-term
Yes.
perspective.
Agreed.
And I think we need to have a sort of consensus ourselves at some point on some of these issues. And so I think the message might be, if people look at this, to say, wait a minute, folks shouldn't get too excited at this point. This is raw data. We're just seeing it for the first time as well. We're not suggesting, at least I don't think we are, that we take these results and somehow wrap them in exactly as the numbers show here to the master plan. At least my personal bias would be to sort of meter this out a little bit with what I think of as important public policy issues and say, yep, we hear this message, but we think this is the way to think about it in terms of long-term direction for the town.
Mhm.
So
I agree. And I think anytime you circulate the data, you want to say how many participants shared their viewpoint, because it is only 290 people out of 10,000 or whatever.
Right.
Right, yeah.
That was my concern. Were we okay with the number of responses that we got? I mean, 290, it's a small sampling of the community. I know you can't twist someone's arm, but it just seems like a small percentage.
Yeah.
right, Joyce, yeah, you're right. And I mean, EDC did their survey a while back. I think they got 400 and something, as I vaguely
Yeah.
recall.
That remi-
So,
reminds me.
I mean, nobody gets, 20, 30% of the population on these things, unfortunately. So that's another reason, good point, Joyce, that I view this as sort of high level directional input from a portion of the population that is motivated to, participate in these kind of things, that you'd be, I guess, should be cautious about assuming that the entire town, has this opinion. But
Right.
it's our job, I think, to take this and modify, interpret as appropriate, and come up with a plan here. So it's work in progress.
Especially since so many of the boards and committees were sort of blackened by the pandemic. For example, I couldn't advocate the survey to the Council on Aging
Mm.
that because we weren't having meetings, so that didn't get out to that population, which we had tried to do.
What was the total sample size? 280?
290.
290.
81.
Less
90.
than 0.03% of the town. So
We just say less than 300.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Nearly 300. Let's be positive.
Tom, was there a survey with the housing production plan?
Yes, there was.
What was
Do you
your?
know how many respondents you got on that one?
170-ish, 76, I think it was.
Now, did that go out to the general population or did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah can comment on all the distribution lists it was sent out to, and
Yep.
Mike's up for all those things.
Oh, okay.
Basically all the same channels.
And that's why one thing, I think it was the clerk's office or something, it's saying that, if everybody has a mailing address, but also everybody has, not everybody, but most people have email address. And if you want to publicize your email address to the town so they can send you these things, I think we would hit so many more people when they fill out the census or whatever they do. Because I rather get stuff sent to me in my Yahoo account, just like I get stuff from the town from my mailbox out in the street. I think nowadays, if everybody that wants to say, send me stuff through email, that's how you can communicate me for town affairs, surveys and stuff like that. I wish that direction was going more that way.
Well, we do have our town e-alerts, which, encourage people to sign up for those. And I think it has to be a voluntary basis because our email has been jammed with so much spam. People have to volunteer to receive those. And I think that's a really great way of doing it. I don't understand why we don't have more engaged population. I'm just surprised by that.
I mean, we did look to try and get, that more kind of alert type message out there, but because of the virus and because of the what was the other thing that was out there, the virus and the election information, the banner alerts, of which there's only two, there's a kind of a main web page one and there's one on every individual board and commission page. They were already kind of spoken for, which is why we couldn't use that overall alert system in another kind of era that might be the case. I mean, one thing we might want to think about when we come back and look at the first draft of the objectives and goals is actually having something in there around sense of community. It's probably maybe the place to put it, around how do we increase the participation and the engagement of the community as a whole, and actually have that as a, here's something we really want to try and achieve, and formalize that communication kind of model. As Tom was saying, okay, what is the best way to try and connect with people? And to actually make that, recognize that it's something we haven't been able to do very successfully this time around, and say, okay, as we go forward, we want this mechanism for communicating with our community, and actually getting a much higher level of participation.
Mhm.
Well, part of the thing too, when we talked about the survey, I had contacted Pam LaFrancois to ask her if we could put the notice in the mailing to the seniors in town. And she agreed, except, the pandemic, and there was no mailing sent out. So, it's just a circumstance too that prevented some information from flowing as it
Yeah.
ordinarily would.
Agreed.
Maybe you see Julie has her hand up. Maybe she has a comment about survey stuff. Should we
Julie?
listen to her?
I don't see him.
While we look for that, I did just look in the sample size calculator. I mean, we only needed 260 to get a 95% confidence level with a 6% or a 6% confidence interval for the 10,000. So that's not bad.
Yeah, although Andrew, I don't see this as a particularly unbiased sample, frankly. So I don't have any data to prove that, but I think you're exactly right. If you get a random sample out of the population, that's a good number.
Yeah.
But if you get it, all people over 70 years old or something, then that may not be. That's why they want a swimming pool, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe we should demographic information.
All right. Julie, hi, Julie.
Hi, Mimi, thank you. So I was going to just echo Andrew's point that, it does seem small. And the EDC also expressed a lot of frustration about it's really hard to get people engaged in these things, but it is a statistically significant sample. We were able to get, over 400, but you guys were dealing with different circumstances with the pandemic. There's just less word of mouth. People are worried and focused on different things right now as well. And I think that's definitely a part of it. And also, we were able to do things like we reached out to went to the senior center we made little cue cards where you could put your phone, with your phone to download the survey from your phone. We were able to do things like that. We put those in some local businesses. So we're able to reach people in ways that you guys weren't able to because of the circumstances right now. One thing just going forward, because obviously this is done and I think it's statistically significant. I don't think we should have to defend it too much, or you should have to defend it too much. But one thing that we did find success for going forward, I'm not sure what your guys' plan was as far as, public meetings and things like that and how we're going to present the information to the public. But something we found helpful, because we struggled with getting people to attend, and it's this whole idea of engagement. But we had our biggest engagements by a lot were when we decided to do direct mailers, like postcard mailers that you get at a really cheap rate, letting people know that we were having meetings, because not everybody's reading My South Borough and not everybody's on social media, and everyone's very busy. So it was a different way to reach a different population. And for us, particularly because we were focused on downtown, we wanted to make sure we were reaching all the downtown residents as best we could. So that was one thing that was relatively easy to do. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Julie, what was the cost of that initiative?
I can look. It was cheaper than we thought because there's a postcard rate. And we got a really good rate on the printing because it was just the little tiny mailers, but it made a huge difference. We filled the town hall meeting room, the McAfee meeting room one night, almost full. And previous to that, we were only getting 25 people and, you know, half of them were the people who, you know, are on the committees or on other relevant committees who are showing up. So yeah, so that did seem to help. And, you know, it just makes me feel more confident in doing what we're doing if we're hearing from as many people as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So is that it on survey? Okay, the next item on our agenda was the visioning statement, which we do not have yet. We were told that we will have it by June 17th, which will give us a couple weeks to look at it before our next meeting. Anything else on visioning statement, Judith?
No, I think, you know, we said at the last meeting that we would approve for sharing with the MAP the objective statements that we reviewed last time for a lot, 3 hours, plus any edits that we wanted to make. And there were some edits that Karen and I made to the open space green environment one. And then I also combined the 2 different accessibility connectivity documents. And that was actually, I did get, you know, support from Bonnie that was, you know, good reflection of the discussions that she had with Kathy Bartolini. So if anyone wants to see the final statements that have gone to the MAPC, they're in the shared drive, they're in the topics and supporting documents in a specific folder that says objectives sent to MAPC. So there's just 5 of those documents there. So you can, you know, you can see the versions that have gone. But I think that, you know, as Mimi said, the really key next step will be to see that draft report and then, you know, look to make any final edits that we want to make, and then start the review, you know, the sharing and the review process with our boards and commissions.
Okay. The next steps, Sarah said she'd write the final master plan for us, so.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
that was officially recorded. Yeah, just to go off of what Judith just said, MAPC has said that they will give us that draft by June 16th, so that this board can receive it on June 17th, which will give 2 weeks for review before the July 1st meeting.
And so the visioning statement is kind of an overview, and then I think that's what it is. And then each chapter gets down more into the nitty gritty and the implementation, which is the most important part.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think, you know, I mean, I know Sarah kind of has offered to support us in terms of if we get to the end of June and there's still, you know, there will be more work that we need to do to make it, you know, a holistic report, and also to take it down into implementation planning. And I have, you know, previously said I'm more than happy to get involved in that, because that was what I did in a prior life. And obviously anyone else that's willing to pour over data and documents and write, I think would be very grateful for anyone who can spend some time to do that. I think the important thing, though, is to remember, and if you look at these objective statements, you'll see that is we've already gone a long way down the track to defining the strategies to support the objectives and goals. So whereas I think when the report was put together in 2008, because I think more of it was actually, more of the initial work was done by MAPC, there was this distinct separation between, well, here's your goals, and now there's a whole exercise to come up with the strategies and actions and recommendations around those goals. We've already done a lot of that thinking during the last 12 months. So I think we should be, we shouldn't be kind of sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, we've got another year's worth of work to be able to take it down to the next level. Plus, we've talked before about, as we get the buy-in from our boards and commissions and we kind of work with them to discuss how we're actually going to implement some of these, goals and strategies, I think that's where, the work will start to change to be a more, how do we actually execute on this and get collaboration? We've talked before about, the fact that we've got documents like the open space and rec plan, which are already very detailed and very much kind of, I think aligned with the master plan, that I think we'll be able to map out how all of this fits together to get that overall, document.
So when we circulate the vision statement, the vision section, then will our task be as individual representatives from committees to circulate it within our committee if there is a meeting before our next July 1st meeting to get feedback? Or do you understand what I'm asking? Like,
yeah,
if we happen to have a meeting before the July 1st, but after June 16th, then, and we can share it with our committees and get feedback, then that would be ideal.
yeah,
That to June 1st.
I think that's what we were thinking. Yeah.
Okay. So we could, some of us could plan our meetings in that time frame to ensure that we could meet on it.
I like your thinking, Catherine, and I was thinking the exact same thing because I like to share the survey, make sure they have it in the vision statement. So, and you do have the 4th of July break, so we might not get a lot of response until probably towards the end of July if we can give it to the individual committees before July 1st. I'm just thinking with the vacations and stuff like that, I don't know how much attention it's going to be given.
People are taking vacations. What?
That was going to be my question.
I want to
My
go.
life is a vacation.
I want to get out of here too.
This is part of my vacation, what I'm doing now. But I was curious, and Catherine, I was right, Kat, sorry. I was writing the same thing because I like to document these documents before, people go away. So at least if they had time, they could start reviewing it.
So hopefully June 17th is what we were told.
Prior to us distributing to our individual committees, do we want to meet before we just give that information away, share that information?
I don't think that's necessary. You can share it and get input from your committees and then bring that back here.
Get first reactions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just that this committee won't have the time to review what MAPC does for their visioning, I guess. I think that's why I was asking.
Well, that's okay. We can get input and discuss it at our next meeting in July, and then our discussion will send back to MAPC.
I mean, I'm hopeful that what MAPC are going to be doing is creating, creating a document that, one, reflects the work that we've done, and two, links that work to the data that we've, we shared at the Vision Forum, the data that we've, been looking at, and then, helps us identify gaps and next steps. I mean, I wouldn't anticipate that they're going to be going away and writing whole chapters or whole parts of chapters where we kind of look at it and go, well, where do you get that from? Because that's what we had agreed with our process, is that we want to be the ones that are actually driving content here.
But given our experience with the survey, maybe it's prudent for Mimi to take a look at when that statement comes in and say, is that something that we're likely to be comfortable with sharing with our individual committees at this point? And if it turns out that it's somehow, not something that you think maybe it would be helpful to share, then to have a little bit of quality control on it before it goes out to the world and creates misconceptions or whatever. I think it's likely to be okay. On the other hand, it sounds to me like it might be reasonable insurance for you to take a look. And if it's not something you think would be good to share, then send a message to everybody saying, sorry, it needs more review. We'll discuss it at our next meeting.
I can do
Fair
that.
point. Fair point, Sam. Fair point.
It comes through and says Town of Pittsfield on the top.
I thought it was Pittsburgh.
Mimi, if we need an ad hoc additional meeting after the 17th before we send this to our committees, I think so I would certainly be willing to attend, just to discuss whatever issues you may feel are problematic.
Yeah, maybe a quick meeting if that's necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If not, you can probably notify us, and then that is okay, and then we can share it to the committee, just to have somebody review it slightly before. Yeah.
Filtering, yes.
Okay.
Do we want to plan a tentative meeting just in case as a hold for that? Or do you think we can throw something together fast enough?
Well, I'm certainly busy as hell, but I don't know about everybody else.
How tough is it to get a Zoom room, Sarah?
It's tough.
Is it?
I'll let Sarah speak, but I think it's filling up fast.
Oh,
It can be
But for
very,
evenings, but maybe not daytime.
I mean, I think it depends on the time of day. Definitely the evenings seem to fill up a little bit faster than during the day. I think that there tends to be a lot of capacity kind of in the afternoon because people don't seem to really want to meet in the afternoon, but it can be a little tricky.
what about mornings? Do they fill up quick?
Mornings fill up relatively quickly as well.
So do you want to what's the consensus? Do you want to put a hold on a room for a tentative meeting after the 17th?
They are first come, first serve, so.
Yeah. Maybe try to grab the 18th in the morning at 8 o'clock or something.
Yeah, and if it's just a targeted meeting on this topic only, we can probably keep it within an hour.
Sure.
Or 30 minutes.
Yep.
Okay. You're ambitious.
Can you do mornings, Andrew?
I can't. I was just checking my schedule. I can't do Thursday mornings.
How about Friday morning? That's a Friday I think I could do.
Yeah, actually, I can't do that Thursday morning either. So
19th.
I can do Friday morning, but I'm getting my hair cut at noon and I'm not canceling that for anything.
Wait a minute.
Is that your first?
Yes.
Coveted appointment.
I
mean, right now my calendar shows that I'm free, but I'm consulting, so if something comes up, I gotta go.
Well, we grab the Friday morning, the 19th, then, and tentatively
Okay.
at 8,
Yeah.
and can let go if we need to.
So would you say 8 o'clock?
I said 8.
7:30?
7:30 could do, yeah.
Oh, I could do 7:30 if that's helpful for folks.
That's more likely to not get booked for me.
At 7:30?
Yeah, then I think we should shoot for that because we need a body. Also your mind, but
Good.
just someone to.
Not my good looks.
I don't mean to be. I just went south. Scratch it all.
So would that work, Bill and Lisa and Joyce?
Fine with me.
Okay,
Good.
Okay with me.
okay, so 7:30, June 19th.
We said 7:30 in the morning or at night?
In the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just checking, sorry. I was,
Definitely not on a Friday night.
that's why I was
Oh,
checking.
we have so many fun things to do.
Yeah.
I bet that time would be open though.
Yeah, probably.
The only conflict I may have is if I don't get reelected, then I can't be your Board of Selectmen representative, so I may not be
Hey,
available.
you're a lock,
That's,
Lisa. Come on.
that's not happening,
You
Lisa.
never know, you never know what you never know. So
I got mine.
that might be my only conflict.
We hope that doesn't happen.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no way.
Me too, but
All right, the last thing was there was a PowerPoint that I think we discussed before, and then we had a pandemic, and about a couple of slides to just
Oh,
discuss our process at town meeting.
are they
And
still doing that?
so I'm confused. I thought they were not, but so the message, the note from Paul talked about reports need to be to him by the end of this week, which confused me because I didn't think there were any reports.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think whatever is going to be done is pretty limited, and there's no audio visual, no video anyway that I'm aware of. And Lisa, you may know more about it than I do, but I think it's going to be tough to do a report other than somebody standing up. Now, you could stand up and do the 3-minute summary, which might be a useful thing to try to get in the queue for this, to say, here's what we're doing and we're working on it. And we're going to be reaching out to people as we go along here, kind of thing, versus having a slideshow.
You might want to just touch base with Paul, because I know from a CPC's perspective, we pushed everything that's not financial that we have to pay. So I would just touch base with Paul Semino and ask what he's expecting. But we're going to submit probably a report for the CPC, but we're not going to read it or anything.
Okay.
But should we be more proactive? I mean, my theory is we ought to say, hey, Paul, we'd like to do a 2-minute update, that maybe you would stand up and say, here's what's going on with the master plan committee. Stay tuned, more news later, kind of thing.
Well, my thought is if nobody's doing reports, because we're just trying to move this along as quickly as possible, I don't think the master plan committee wants to be bucking that trend and doing a report.
Oh, come on.
That
man.
will just annoy people.
Yeah. But if you make that suggestion to Paul, he can say nobody's doing reports, or yeah, I've got 6 other people who are doing the same
Oh,
thing.
So so do I have the consensus from this committee to do a report if he says other people are doing reports?
Sure.
I like that.
Yeah, if he tells you to do it, yeah.
Andrew, when you said CPC was going to submit a report, is that going to be in a written report that's provided in documentation that they're providing to the town residents? Is that how that works?
Yeah, we do that every year.
Okay.
So there will be handouts, as I understand it. So, but again, I'm not sure that it's worth a handout for master plan versus a 2-minute statement kind of thing.
yeah, and also you consider that there's going to be a fall town meeting. So, that being said as well,
Right.
he may want to put that off. I don't know the bandwidth of people, honestly, that are coming, that are just going to want to get in and out as quick as they can. I don't know if someone's going to want to sit and listen to reports either. So,
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
if it's hot out
that-
there in the sun.
yeah.
That was my thought until I saw that note from Paul. It confused me.
Okay.
I think that was not clear, and I think that was not the intent. He wants to get done quickly, I think, too.
I think so too, Sam. I agree.
All right. So if I'll touch base with Paul. If he says 100 people are doing reports, I'll jump in line.
Try to get in first before everybody leaves. That's called a quorum killer.
Mimi, do you need his number? Do you have it?
I'll just email him.
Okay.
And the last thing is reappointments. I think I already strong-armed everybody that's here.
Lisa and I reappointed ourselves the other night.
We
Yeah,
did.
yeah, so you're all set.
I'm on the list.
So if anyone's listening and hasn't joined the meeting and you're on this committee, please let town planner know whether you want to be reappointed or not. Anything that the members want to bring forward to the committee?
We should do the minute review, Mimi.
Yep, that's next.
Oh, sorry, I haven't got the agenda up, sorry.
Okay, and so the approval of the minutes from May 6th.
I have one proposed edit to that, Mimi.
Okay.
I'm ready.
In line 115. I don't think I said that because I know it's not true. If I did, I misspoke. It says, Mr. Stivers explained the private schools have already expressed interest in being involved. I think what I said is Mr. Stivers suggested that the private schools should be approached about being involved. 'Cause
Okay.
Roger and I have not talked with them specifically about this. But we did talk with the Southborough schools about it.
All right, so Sam, I'll say Mr. Stivers explained that the private schools should be approached about being involved.
Correct, that's fine.
Okay. Duly noted.
Should
Anything
anybody ever
else?
read the minutes? Should
I read the minutes.
I know, Mimi does.
be fantastic. Riveting. If you're having trouble
They
going,
are
it's better than Sominex.
best minutes ever.
They are
Wow.
good.
I second that.
Third.
Thanks, guys.
Fourth.
So do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Latrell,
Aye.
yes.
Aye.
You have to do a roll call.
Oh,
So
sorry.
Latrell, yes. Stivers,
Yes.
Steins,
Yes,
Mark Lear,
Yes.
Mills,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Braccio,
Yes.
Minogue.
Joyce, yes.
How do you pronounce your last name, Joyce?
Macnoscus.
Macnoscus. It took me 5 years to get Savidovich, so it took me time.
Thank you.
Okay, and so the next meeting, we have a tentative meeting for June 16th, June 19th at 7:30 a.m.
Mhm.
And the next meeting on our schedule was for July 1st. Do we want to make that a morning meeting also?
That would be good.
Is morning better for everybody?
Only if we started early, I can, if we have like a 2-hour meeting and start at 7:30, that's more realistic for me. It's not about me, of course. But, if we start at 8, it makes it a little more tricky.
I
Actually,
agree with Kat. We have to have a end time.
that's actually, yeah, no, I have staff meetings on Wednesday mornings.
Well, let's do 7:30 a.m. on that day.
Yeah, so if that happens, then I might need to leave at 8:30.
Well, you can force it by leaving if you're the key for quorum. So if you leave, it's over. So
Yeah.
Oh,
that works.
The
The
You
pressure.
have the power.
hopefully it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll request a room for July 1st at 7:30 a.m. also.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not a morning person, no guarantees what you're gonna get, but
You don't have to.
If
show
you
your
not use
picture.
video, you
Just
won't
do
want to see
audio,
my hair.
audio only.
My hair
may
can't.
very well be in my pajamas.
Or paste in the picture that you want there.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. And I have a Fred Flintstone version of a laptop, so I don't have
Uh-oh.
any options. Okay, so do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second it.
Okay, roll call. Latrell, yes. Stivers,
yes?
Stein,
Yes.
Marklear,
Yes.
Mills,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Braccio,
Yes.
McNoskis.
Yes,
What
good
Watson?
job.
about
Right.
Watson?
You forgot Judith.
Oh, Watson, I'm sorry.
We can't adjourn. Wait a minute.
I went to my right and didn't see you over there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So I was looking for another 10:30 finish, you know, I'm disappointed.
All right, thank you
Reminds me
very
to
much,
do
everybody.
that.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Stay safe,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
bye.
Looking forward to the quarantinis, Kate.
Oh, I'll bring them to the next meeting. I'll make deliveries.
7:30 a.m.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guess, all right, maybe.
Even more